Today we're going to be breaking up in the service into 3 different sections based around 3 different words. All starting with the letter RE because I'm in that mood at the moment. And these 3 different words are hopefully going to give us a little bit of insight into Holy Week. But because this is the first Sunday of school holidays, is that good? And because this is an all-age service, each section is going to have 2 different options. We're going to have an option where we sit and listen to a reflection and do some personal reflecting ourselves. Sound exciting, Kirili? Yeah. She did say yes. Or there's a hands-on option for the people who would like to do something with their hands. And each section's got an opportunity for you to be able to do something that helps us also reflect on the same Bible reading.
They brought it to Jesus. They threw their cloaks on the colt and put Jesus on it. As he went along, people spread their cloaks on the road. When he came near the place where the road goes down to the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully to praise him. Praise God in loud voices for all the miracles they had seen. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest. Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." Rebuke your disciples, which is better. I tell you, he replied, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out.
So our first hands-on activity before we get to the reflection is over at the tables. You may want to grab some palm branches on the way through, particularly the ones that have got really long leaves. Because Ruby and Pippa over there before were learning how to fold palm crosses. And they're excellent experts at it now, are you not? They're better than they were when they started. And so if you want to go over there, there's some instructions on the table. All you need is a long leaf and follow the instructions, or follow Ruby, because she's the expert. And you can make some palm crosses while we do the reflection. This is not for the kids, because this is only just for the kids, because this is an all-age worship. So anybody who would prefer to make a palm cross can head over to the tables and see how you go while we do a short reflection here. Got the idea? Now, when I came to write the reflection for today, I did have to remind myself that I've already preached on Palm Sunday already this year. Do you remember that? 2 weeks ago, we preached on Palm Sunday when we talked about how Jesus was a revolutionary, where he pushed back the status quo and questioned why they were doing the things that they were doing. So I'm not actually going to talk about that side of Palm Sunday today at all, but rather I'm just going to pick up on another idea of Palm Sunday, which Palm Sunday is a picture of contrasts. A picture of contrasts. We know from the Easter story that King Herod was currently staying in Jerusalem. At the time that that Bible reading occurred, King Herod would have already been in Jerusalem. Now, when Herod arrives, being the king, he would have had a massive parade through the main gate, him riding on a big horse, lots of flags everywhere. It would have been a royal occasion where people would have proclaimed their love for the king. But when Jesus arrived, it was almost like Jesus is going, I purposely contrast what you have seen when King Herod arrived. Instead of using the main gate, Jesus entered in almost the back gate, the east gate. I actually did some research for the Bible study, which is out now. Bible study for this week. There's also copies on the back table out there. And one of the questions is, why did Jesus use this particular gate? Because it was totally unsuitable for a large gathering. It was actually one of the smaller gates, the East Gate. And if you're talking about a large gathering of people all praising God, there was much better gates to be doing that than the East Gate. So why did you choose that gate? Have a look at the Bible study. But there was a series of contrasts. Instead of using the main gate, he uses the back gate. Instead of riding on a horse, Jesus rides on a donkey. Instead of flags, people grabbed branches and waved. Jesus was clearly saying, I am not the same as King Herod. You can call me a king, but I am not the same as King Herod. And the people knew it. Listen to what they said. Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. They themselves were saying, not only yes, you are a king, but yes, you are the king, the Messiah. What a declaration, which I think is quite funny from a crowd who 5 days later was crying out for him to be crucified. I think this idea of contrast can go a step further yet. If we're talking about, Jesus saying, I'm not the same, there is a difference between King Herod and myself. I think he was also trying to show, not only on Palm Sunday, but in all of his actions, there's a difference between right behaviour and wrong behaviour. Things that please God and things that cause God sadness. We see it even in the story. The crowd's praising God, and the Pharisees try to shut it down. These are the people who are supposed to be the religious leaders, and they're trying to shut down praises to God. Often when we stray into behaviour which makes God unhappy, it's not that we choose to do something incredibly evil. It's often that we take something which is good and then try to twist it slightly into making it something which is not good. An example of that is what happens straight after this Bible reading. Jesus walks into the temple and says, this is supposed to be a house of prayer, but you've twisted it, you've changed it, you've made it something it's not supposed to be. You've made it a marketplace. And so Jesus, in his words and his actions, is saying, turn away from this behaviour which is not quite of God and come back to what is of God. So in the triumphant entry, when the Pharisees are trying to shut down this spontaneous act of worship, Jesus says, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're missing the point. These people are praising God. And if you shut it down, the stones will continue that praise. As we enter into Holy Week, may we begin to embrace that spontaneous sense of Holy Week is about worship. Holy Week is about declaring the greatness of God. And nothing can stop that. What we're going to do now is that we're actually going to have our praise time now. We're going to sing a couple of songs. But I want us to try and just be open to the way that the crowd reacted on that day. The crowd didn't care if people looked at them and said, you look silly waving a branch. They just did it anyway, because it was a spontaneous act of worship. When they threw their cloaks on the ground or they shouted, Hosanna, it was a spontaneous act of worship. Let us declare the greatness of God in our worship this morning. Let us not worry about what other people are thinking around us. It's between us and God. Let us worship God.
The second Bible reading is from Luke chapters 20 to 45 to 21, verse 4. While all the people were listening, Jesus said to his disciples, beware of the teachers of the law. They like to walk around in flowing robes and love to be greeted in the marketplaces and have the most important seats in the synagogue and the place of honour at banquets. They devour widows' houses and for a show make lengthy prayers. Such men will be punished most severely. As he looked up, Jesus saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. I tell you the truth, he said, this poor widow has put in more than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on.
If you want to do the hands-on activity for this one, did you listen to the Bible reading? It talked about 2 small coins. These are actually, I found on the internet, like the coins that the woman would have used to put in the offering. I've hidden 40 of these around the church. Not in this building, not in this part of the building, but I have them in that room behind those doors there, the colonnade room. I have them in the chapel, I have them in the foyer, I have them in the hallway, I have them in the skylight room and the garden room and the lounge and the hall. To help you, I have 5 of them in each of those 8 places. Do you need me to run through them again? Colonnade, foyer, chapel, hallway, garden, skylight, lounge, hall. So if you find 5 in one area, that's it. You don't need any more in that area. Well, you won't find any more in that area. If you earn enough coins as a group, you can bring them back, and I've got something hidden here that you might like to spend the coinage on. Got the idea? But you only have the length of time it takes me to do my reflection to find enough coins. You're allowed to use adults in it as well. Are you ready? You may go. They're off and running. All right. While they're doing that, we've read a lot of Luke in the last 6 weeks. I just better put a disclaimer in here. If anybody's read the daily reflection for today, have you? Yeah, I noticed that I had to write a daily reflection, the exact same passage that I'd already written a reflection in my sermon for. So it's exactly the same. But we've read a lot of Luke over the last little while in our daily reflections. And we haven't even got to the readings from the Easter weekend yet. Actually, putting it all together, we would nearly read all of Luke's chapters 10 to about 24 over Lent. We've done quite well as a congregation. But one thing that's jumped out to me as I've been reading through this is that when people encounter Jesus, they're often challenged to reconsider their ideas, or reconsider their assumptions, or when hearing Jesus, it makes them reconsider their understandings or beliefs or decisions that they have made. Examples are like Zacchaeus up the tree. He encounters Jesus and reconsiders his whole business practice. Or Mary and Martha. When Jesus comes to have dinner, Mary is forced to reconsider her priorities. Or even the rich young ruler, when Jesus affirmed him and yet said, yet this one thing you need to do. Time after time, it's almost like Jesus is saying, I know you think this, but now I want you to consider this. I know that the common practice is to do things this way, but why don't you reconsider doing things this way? In the reading that we just had, there's 2 examples of this. Firstly, in the time of Jesus, some of the most respected people at that time were the rabbis or the teachers of the law. They were seen as having insight into God and be able to share that insight with people. But Jesus was saying to the crowd, reconsider what you respect about people. What are the things that you should be respecting in people? If you're respecting them because of their position, because they look important, because they say long prayers, because they give them the seat of honour at the banquet, and yet overlook the way they treat people, then you're missing the point.
reconsider what is worthy of respect. The second reading I always find interesting, the woman and the 2 coins. I can well imagine the disciples being totally confused when Jesus said she gave more than all the others. And them going, seriously? I saw the bags of money go into the treasury. She did not give more. Once again, Jesus challenges them to look differently. Don't look at it from the amount, but rather reconsider what the cost was in the giving. What did it cost the woman when she gave her 2 coins? The other people gave out of their wealth. She gave out of the little that she had to live on. I wonder when we move into Holy Week, when we're open to having our assumptions or our thoughts or our beliefs challenged. Are we open if Jesus invites us to reconsider something this week? And I wonder what that reconsidering might cost us. Cost us a little of what we've got, or cost us a lot like the woman. We're going to ponder that as we take up our offering. This is our opportunity to resource what God is doing, but it's also our opportunity to reflect about what it means to give. So we're going to sing a song. You didn't buy 3. I forgot to tell you not to look in cupboards. Did you look in cupboards? Because they're ready cupboards. They were all filling. No, 37. I reckon I was going to let you do it over 35. I've got underneath here something that's worth about $40, and I was going to say that 1 coin was worth about $40. So I reckon you've reached it. So you can, if you want to, exchange all these coins for this.
I think we should do that.
Wait for it. Let me tell you, there is about 75 big eggs, lots of little eggs, and chuppa chups of people who can't eat eggs. There's enough in here for a small Easter egg hunt that you could do. So do you want to do that? Do you want to exchange all your coins for all of this?
Yeah.
Except for we just heard a story about a woman who gave out of what she had so that other people could have more. You know what? This is possibly enough, and I did not nick this out of the Easter eggs that you've been donating. I've bought this myself. If everyone's going, well, that's where my Easter eggs have gone. No. I reckon this is enough eggs to run the Easter egg hunt up at the Cranberry Uniting Church, where the blokes are going next week. Now, this is going to be really hard to try and explain this to some people. But I reckon that the choice is either you can have all of these, or we could give them to the farmers who are struggling. Well, they didn't get their crops in last year. I know they've had rain, but they still are without crops yet. The farmers up at Cranberry, and say, here is a gift from the young people at Turramurra Uniting Church for your Easter egg hunt next weekend. What do you reckon? You can have them. I'm prepared if the vote is to do it today. Let me just tell you that there is around about 600 eggs for next Sunday, so you're not going to go without. What do you reckon? You want to have these now, or do you want to give them to people who probably need them more?
I don't know.
It's a hard one, isn't it? And I reckon that was the point that the lady who gave the 2 coins, it was cost her a lot.
100.
You see, I'm not willing to split this up, because you might go, oh, can't you just give a few? No, this is the tough lesson of today, Jody. You've got to come next week for the chocolate.
Kirili says give them away.
Kirili says to give them to the farmers. Now, I just got to make sure, do you young people understand what we're doing here? Do you want to eat them today or eat them next week? That's the question. And if you give these to the people who need them, probably more than we do. Because that's what happened in the Bible reading. Shall we do that?
Yeah.
Come next week. I'll explain it to you afterwards. You don't believe how hard it is for me to do. Because I'm not giving you anything today. Nothing. Zip. But that's what cost the lady. We just talked about cost. And this is an example of a really big cost. Come next week.
The last Bible reading this morning is from Luke 22, verses 39 to 46. Jesus prays on the Mount of Olives. Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed. "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. When he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples, he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. "Why are you sleeping?" he asked them. "Get up and pray, so that you will not fall into temptation."
Our last hands-on activity is back at the tables there again. This is a story about Jesus feeling anguished or sad or just struggling with what's happening. So I've got over there, I've got some Play-Doh, I've got textures, I've got paper, I've got pencils. I'm asking you just to be creative. You can be as abstract as you want, or you can draw a picture of Jesus praying, or you can draw whatever you like. But I want you to try and think about, what does it mean for someone to be feeling that sad that they are, for the older people, anguished? How would you be creative with that word? Anguished. So if you want to go over there, you've got about the length of time for me to do a reflection to create something. You can either draw, you can use the Play-Doh, you can do whatever you like. Once again, this is not just for kids. If the adults would prefer to be creative and head over to the tables and draw something, or make something with Play-Doh, you can do that as well. Whenever I do an Easter service with kids, there's always a bit of a problem. Can you work out the problem? Easter story in kids? It doesn't really go very well. The Easter story has got some horrible parts to it. You know, even when I was doing the story of Bugs on the little kids group on Friday, I'm trying not to do the cross, because how do you explain to really, really little kids about somebody dying? So I thought, that's okay, I'll skip over and I'll do Easter Sunday. That's a great story. But how does Easter Sunday start? Jesus is in a tomb. What's a tomb? It's where you put somebody when they've died. There's lots of difficulties with the story, with the Easter story. It's a very complex story which we as adults can probably wrestle with a bit easier. But with little kids, it's a hard story to try and work through. And sometimes we sort of slip into that bad habit of going, like I did on Friday, let's just tell the happy parts of the story. Let's just focus on the good parts of the Easter story with kids. But in doing so, we're missing one of the profound parts of what the Easter story is about. The Easter story is full of sadness and sorrow. I have a rule on Good Friday that we're not allowed to mention the resurrection. In the songs, in my talk, I don't talk about the resurrection. Because I think what we're trying to do is acknowledge the difficulty of Good Friday. If we just skip over like Tony Campbell did and say, but Sunday's coming, sort of go, but Friday's a day we've got to wrestle with. This sadness and sorrow is most profound in the reading we just had. When Jesus, on Maundy Thursday, 3 things happened that must have broken Jesus' heart. The first thing that he shared that meal with his closest people in the world, the people he just spent the last 3 years with. And it would have been a deeply emotional time for him, just being with the people he loved and knowing what was coming. Even though it was a good thing to be with the people that he loved, it would have been an emotional time. John chapter 13 verse 1 tells us, it was just before the Passover feast. Jesus knew that his time had come for him to leave this world. It was time for him to go to the Father. Jesus loved his disciples who were in the world, and now he showed them just how much he really loved them. That's out of the Kids' Bible, that one, the NIRV version. But yeah, that sense of, I love you so much, now it's time for me to show you just how much. And he did show you. On Maundy Thursday, we're going to be reading the Bible reading of how Jesus took off his outer garments and wrapped a towel around his waist and washed the disciples' feet as an act of service and love. He told them not to be worried or anxious, because even though death was coming, death would not be the end. And then he broke bread and he shared the cup to symbolise how his body was just about to be broken and his blood was just about to be shed for the forgiveness of sins. Can you feel the depth of the emotion of that night? The emotion that both Jesus and the disciples would have been feeling. And as the night progresses, it gets more sorrowful. Jesus goes to the Garden of Gethsemane, just outside the city walls, to pray, and asks his disciples, I just need you to support me now. You know, you are the people who are closest to me. Please be there for me. I know it's hard because it's probably about 2 o'clock in the morning at this stage, and that's why they're falling asleep. But they fall asleep, they're not there for Jesus. And then Judas the betrayer turns up, and then the soldiers arrest him, and the disciples run away with fear, leaving Jesus alone. No wonder in the depths of that prayer that he prayed, he cries out to God, is there any other way? Is there any way that you can change the plan to achieve the outcome, but I don't have to suffer like this? So if there's any other way, please do it. Please do it. And yet he says, but not what I want, what you want. I'm willing to do this if this means the bigger picture is achieved. It's certainly not a nice part of his story. And yet there's something strangely comforting in this. Why? Because it connects with us. This is what life is about, isn't it? Those moments when things are going great, but we also have those moments full of deep anguish when things are not going well. It reflects the reality of our lives. Many of us have had that experience where things go from bad and then something get even worse. When close friends let us down, when we know something difficult is coming and we would do anything rather than to walk down that road, and yet we have to walk down that road. Can you relate to that? The thing that's strangely comforting is that whilst we can relate to it, so can Jesus. Because Jesus went through this too. He lived through that darkness of deep sadness and sorrow too. Life was never promised to be always perfect. And Jesus never said that when we become a follower of him that things were never going to be difficult again. But the Bible does tell us that we have a high priest, Jesus, who not only cares for us, but knows what we are going through. Knows what we are going through because he has gone through it as well. So if you're struggling with something, I invite you to call upon Jesus. Let him know how you're feeling. and believe him when Jesus responds, I know how you feel. Let's just take a few moments now to pray for people who are struggling at the moment with our prayers for others. Thanks, Joe.